Okay, welcome to our presentation from transitioning from Citrix VDI to a Citrix Workspace. This presentation is about how to use a Citrix Workspace in conjunction with Citrix Microapps and APIs to get the data to your users more efficiently. First of all, who are we? Jeroen, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. So I'm Jeroen Vonk. I'm an IT consultant at Rawworks. And at our customers, I'm working with Citrix and Microsoft, Azure in the cloud, and I'm developing microapps for the customer to make his processes a little bit faster and better.
All right, so I'm Gerjon Kunst. I'm a principal consultant at Rawworks and a colleague of Jeroen. My job is mostly the same as Jeroen, and so we help our customers create and make the best of their Citrix investments and use microapps to make their work more efficient. And our goal is to make things that the users do a lot, make them do a little bit more efficient so they save time during the day. So that's enough about us. Let's see the agenda. We have first we're going to talk about the session goals. We have our customer story that we use as a background for why we should use the apps. Then we're going to talk short about how to create the Workspace portal. There are different sessions also from our colleagues of Rawworks. I think we have a total of 6 sessions in the course of 2 weeks about Citrix Workspace. So one of them is how to get started with Citrix Microapps. I urge you to look at that one for more information. So, and then we're going to talk about adding the microapps. So we're going to talk about how to use the built-in templates from Citrix to connect some default apps. We're going to talk about using webhooks. We're going to talk about using APIs. And we're going to talk about using Azure logical apps to get and post data from your environment to the cloud and back. So, and of course, we're going to close off with a few pitfalls we encountered in our daily jobs, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows. So first of all, the session goals. The main reason is why this session. Well, we work at our customers with a lot of Citrix stuff, and we see most of our customers making the transition from a traditional Citrix VDI environment to a more workspace-oriented portal environment, and we see a lot of things that customers and us consultants do wrong when starting on this adventure. So that's the reason for our session is we want to help you with some things from the field, things we encountered, things we want to show you about how you can implement these settings and how they can make your life a little bit more easy. So then, what about the session goals? So what are we hoping to give to you by the end of the session? So the things we hope you learned from us is how, in a nutshell, how to build the Citrix Workspace environment. So how to create the basics with a few simple questions and a few easy steps to see that the foundation of your Citrix Workspace portal is as solid as can be. Then how you can use the built-in integrations from the Citrix Workspace portal to connect some of the applications out of the box. So you don't have to build your own custom apps, but you can use templates created by Citrix and maintained by Citrix. Another thing is how you could use webhooks to get data and notifications to your workspace. How to retrieve data from third-party apps through an API, how you can configure that in a micro app. And the last one is, or the second to last one, is how to use Azure Logical Apps to get and post data using Azure Logical Apps in your environment. And of course, we're going to share some pitfalls that we encountered in our adventures up to this point about things you should worry about when you're building such an environment. So, to look at it from the start, we have a customer story. This is not a real customer, but this is a customer we invented based on our recent encounters with customers that want to use Citrix Workspace apps. So we have a customer, it's a local municipality, and it's in the now. It has about 2,000 users. It uses a Citrix and desktop 7.15 LTSR environment, and all users get a published desktops. So that's the now. And the wow that they heard from which Microsoft, Citrix, and VMware all sell is a modern workplace environment where users use a laptop or a computer as a primary device. It should work from anywhere. It should be web-based. It should have central workspace for data and apps, so you could have one place you log on to. From there, you could do all your work. And it should be single sign-on, so users want to log on once and then automatically sign into everything that they want and to every app they want to go to. And the workspace should be optimized, so it should be as efficient as possible. So it should be a way of, if there's an application users have to log on to do one thing, is it possible to get that thing that they need to do outside the application, do it through a micro app, so you don't have to, I have to open the application, you just have to talk to it. So that's sort of a rundown of the most customer stories we have at the moment, and how they all progress in some way or another. So the first part is creating the workspace portal. So let's start with that. So if you want to do, if you have a customer with a VDI environment and they say, okay, well, we want the next step. We want to build a portal where we can do all our work, and we don't want the old school Citrix VDI environment anymore. Okay, well, the first questions you have to ask is, okay, but how are we going to log on? What is your authentication source of truth? Is it, do you want to use your internal AD? Do you want to use Azure AD? Is it an Azure hybrid AD? Do you want to use Okta or whatever? Choose your source of truth for authentication, and choose it wisely, because that's the source on which you're already authenticated with logging on to the portal, and that source is used to log on to subsequent portals or applications once you're logged on, because those credentials are already known. And if you have other, for example, if you log on to an application that has not been integrated in your Azure AD, you have to log on separately. So that would give the users a less than optimum logon experience. Other things is what apps and data needs to be integrated. So what we mostly do at customers is we create some kind of blueprint of the environment, saying, okay, which applications do you have that need to be available in the portal? What data, what files and other things need to be available in the portal, and how we're going to get them there. So one of the things you need to ask yourself is, okay, well, these are the applications that we have. Which of the applications can be converted to SaaS or PaaS, so we can log on to them through, for example, Azure AD, and we have less maintenance on them. So it's a nice way to shake down your application landscape to see which applications you have that you rarely use or are already nominated to be decommissioned at one time. With any existing organization, there's going to be some legacy stuff, some client-server application that's not ready to be cloudified in any way. So what do you do with that application that is still client-server, and it needs to be that way, and it can't be made available by any other way? So that's something you have to ask, okay, what can we do with those? And the other question, for example, is what apps can we connect through an API? So you need to look at your application landscape, say, okay, which of these applications has an API, and how can we connect to the application? So once you got those questions answered, of course, how you can connect. But once you got all these applications and you got these question answers, there's the steps. So you have to define the goals. Okay, if we're going to do this migration from a traditional VDI to a workspace portal application, how are we gonna, what's the ultimate goal? Is it that we want to have all applications available from one workspace? Do we want everything single sign-on? Do we want to make the users log on to as little applications as possible? So define a goal that you want to achieve in the end. So the next step would be define a roadmap for every application that needs to be available, and roadmap is in quotes because a roadmap is maybe a little bit much, but you have to define for every application what you want to do with it. Should it be available? Could it be converted to a SaaS app? If not, if it's a legacy, can we make it a published app and also available from the same portal? Is it possible with specialized apps, for example, that use USB dongles or meters or whatever? How are we gonna get them integrated in the portal? So that's a thing that you need to do, and you need to talk with your customers or with your colleagues about what applications do we want available and in what order do we want them available. So then you create the blank workspace. So then you start with the fancy stuff like the logos and the colors, so the customer feels right at home. It's the colors that he knows, the logo that he knows, to make him feel to show to them that the workspace is designed for them. It's the small things that can help. So the next step would be to migrate and integrate apps one by one. So once you got the roadmap designed for every application, you can say, okay, well, these applications are key for the users in the HR department. So we're going to migrate the HR department first. So if you're going to migrate them, these app needs to be available. Otherwise, we can't migrate them. So you can build a test environment for them or a POC environment and say, okay, once they are all integrated and all is working, you can migrate that bit of the company. And then you can look at another part of the company, which hopefully has a lot of overlap with HR or with calculation or whatever environment you have. So you have to look at the common divider. So if you have one that you can move one department, and then you have 60% of the applications already available in the portal, that makes migrating the rest easy or less difficult. So then the next step is, of course, test, because you need to test, especially the Microapp integration. You need to know that the data you're putting in and pulling out of your application is correct. So you can't have the issue that some of the data is corrupted or placed in a long table or whatever because of an API typo or whatever. So that would give issues. So test the data and test in the test environment and watch out, because you can make stuff broken if you really mess up. So, and one of the steps would be a stage user migration if possible. So you could say, okay, well, we're going to move the HR department, and the next week we're going to move the production department, and the week after that we're going to move the IT department. So staged user migration means that you just put batches of users and not all of them at once, because if there's something not working, you don't want everything impacted. So that's a way you could. That's one of the approaches you could use to building a portal environment. That being said, that's about as much theory as we're going to do in this session. So if we're going to look at the microapps, we're going to talk about 4 ways that we're going to add microapps to the platform. So one is using built-in integrations. So we have an application that Citrix already has a template for. Another thing that Jeroen is going to talk about is about the Webhooks integration. Another one is the use of the API. So how we're going to connect to third-party applications through the APIs via Microapp. And the last one is how we're going to use logical apps, so Azure logical apps, to retrieve and put data in third-party systems that don't have a native API. So that's really cool. So for the first one is using built-in integrations. This customer uses ServiceNow as their service desk, as their ticketing system. So once you log on to the portal, this is what you see. Sorry for the Dutch, but that's the language. Jeroen and we are from the Netherlands. So it's in Dutch, but it's in the same in every language. When a user logs on, he can put in an incident saying, well, my keyboard isn't working. Well, that's a little bit hard to put in, but my screen isn't working, or this application or the printer is not functioning. So he can choose some predefined options that the Microapp retrieves from the ServiceNow environment, and then he can say send, and the information is sent. So that's really cool. So it makes for an easy entry to the environment. So there are template microapps, and those are a set of templates defined and maintained by Citrix. But watch out, only the Citrix part is managed. And they are, I think, fairly well documented by Citrix. So for example, if you look at the ServiceNow integration, it's one of those over there. You can see that once you install it, you need to configure a few things. First of all, you need to configure the ServiceNow part. This is well documented in the Citrix documentation on eDocs, but you have to watch out once you connect that you fill in in this example, your tenant ID. So not the name the customers use to log on to the Workspace portal, but the name you log on to manage it. And you have to know the region in which your tenant is located. So those are things that you need to find out, and then you have to create the API connection. on the client side. So once you know those settings, you can use them and fill them in on the Citrix side of things. So you can select the application from the built-in templates. It's going to ask you, okay, these are the things I want to connect. If you use the ServiceNow template, you're going to get 9 integrations out of the box. You can fill in the integration name. That's the name that's set on top of the buttons in the Workspace portal. You have the connector parameters. Those you can get from the connection you made in the ServiceNow part, the username, the password, the authentication method, so the client secret and the client ID, you can all get from you're configuring the ServiceNow environment. Once that's operational, you can connect. So then it's going to ask, okay, I'm going to sync a few things out of the ServiceNow environment to the Citrix environment. Are these the correct settings? For the built-in microapps, they already selected the correct tables for you to sync. So it's going to sync those, and then the next step is, okay, now there are 9 microapps available and you can add users to them. So once that's all operational, then it's all lights are in the green, and you can send and receive information and send and receive tickets and incidents. So that's a really cool way to get started. And for ServiceNow, you can have a trial environment for a month free of charge that can do this. So if you want to test this, an easy way would be to spin up development Citrix Workspace portal, spin up a ServiceNow portal, and try to get them to connect. So with that, Jeroen.
Yes. So we're going to show you how to retrieve data through the API. First thing we are going to do is we're going to create a micro app for the Citrix Cloud Maintenance Portal. So you can get the notifications of the incidents and the maintenance of Citrix Cloud. In this demo, I'm going to show you how we did find the API URLs for Citrix Cloud maintenance page. Next, I'm going to show you in short how to use Postman to read the API. And after that, I'm going to show you how I have made the micro app so we get the notifications from the incidents and the maintenance inside the Citrix web portal. So the next slide is going to be a pre-recorded video we've made where I'm going to show you the demo.
Okay, cool. So let's see. I'm the man on the buttons this morning or this afternoon. So here we go.
Yeah.
So in this short demo, I want to show you how we built the Citrix Microapp, which gives us the incidents and maintenance notifications about the Citrix Cloud status page. So what we need to do first is we need to know what the API pages are of the Citrix Cloud status page. And therefore, I use Firefox Developer Edition to find out what they are. So the first thing I do is I go to status.cloud.com to open the page of the Citrix Cloud Health Dashboard. When I've done that, I'm going to use F12 to open the advanced options. And then I will go to the network option and I will go to XHR to set it on the correct protocol. Then I'm going to reload the page. When I reload the page, you will see a couple of URL posted back in JSON format, which are given back to us. So if we click one of those URLs, you will see that a little side box will open, and at the side you will see the get command for the API for the maintenance state. And so there are a little bit more of those states you can get through the API. So let's do a little testing in Postman. First, I'm going to open up a new tab and I'm going to paste the URL of maintenance after the get command. And I will send it. When I send it, you will see that there are 2 brackets given back to me. Those two brackets mean there is no data available at the moment, so there is no maintenance planned. So for the testing, let's change maintenance to something else. In this case, I will do it with labels. When I send labels, you will see that I will get back some data. So we now know that it's working correctly. So we've created a Microapp, the cloud status Microapp, and we configured it using the base URL status.cloud.com. And we give it a name Citrix Cloud Statuses. So then we've created two data loading points, the maintenance data loading and the incidents. So the maintenance data loading point points to the status.cloud.com with API/API/maintenance. And if we do a get command from this, we will get the same response back as from Postman. So that's all okay, there's no maintenance at the moment. If we look at the incidents, you'll see exactly the same /API/incidents, and when we test the servers, we will also get, in this case, two brackets because there are no incident at the moment. So that's the way the two data loading points are set up. Now we created two microapps, one for the incidents. We created a page with all incidents, and all incidents is a table where we have configured the incidents to be shown there. The other one is the incident detail, and this is when you click on an incident within the table, you will get this page and it will show you more details about the incident. So the last thing we need to configure is the second microapp, and the second microapp is basically the same as the incident microapp, the maintenance microapp, and it also has one page with the upcoming maintenances, which is also a table format, and we have another one with the details where you can find the details of the maintenance planned. So if you click on one of the maintenance notifications, you will get those details. So at the bottom with properties, we configured the upcoming maintenances and we created a notification, and that notification gives us the title and the message of the maintenance in this case, which we then get back in our notification. So to show you how a notification or incident looks, these are a lot of incident and notifications that came in as a message. And if you click on the microapp, you will see the cloud incidents, if there are any, or you can see the cloud maintenance, if there are any, but there are none at the moment, so it won't give us any information back.
Okay, cool. So that's how to retrieve data through APIs. Cool thing. So we got the next one. Now we're going to use the webhooks.
Yes, now we're going to use the webhooks. So the next video is going to give us a short explanation on how we can use the webhooks inside Citrix Microapps. And this is a way you can configure microapps completely inside the Citrix environment. I'm going to show how it's configured inside the Citrix Microapps, and I'm going to give you a short demo on how we then created the notifications microapps without the use of any external services. So also the next one is going to be a video we've pre-recorded.
Okay, let's go.
So in this short demo, I want to show you how we've made a notification system with microapps using only Citrix Cloud and the webhook listener, which is available. So we created a notification overview and we created a new notification microapp. The new notification microapp is the way to create notifications for the user. We have informational, maintenance and incident types at the moment. And for now we're going to create a maintenance notification for a user. So we put here a little title, short description of the maintenance, what it's going to be. So let's say testing for maintenance. And then we need to give a start time. The start time and date may not be earlier than the current date and time. So you always have to choose a date and time in the future. The end time can never be before the start time. So when that happens, you also will see this error message. So we have to choose a time beyond the start time. When that's done, we put in a little message again about what the maintenance is going to be. And when we've done that, we send the notification. So now you see that the notification is sent. So now we go to the notification overview. You will see the second one, testing for maintenance. If you click it, you'll see the notification details we've just made. So if we click on home now, it will give us the message we've just made, and this will be the message that the user will get when we send a notification. So how did we create it? So the first thing, we've created an integration, notifications, and within that integration we created a webhook listener. So the webhook listener is created with a specific URL, and we created token authentication to make it secure. We created a prefix token key, and we created our own columns within the table to make sure we can put in everything we want. So you see the message, the type, the title, the end time, the start time, and we created the timestamp as our ID. So let's take a short look at the tables. We see that there is a notification table, and at the end you'll see that there is our message saved inside the Citrix Cloud tables. So the next thing we do is we go and look at the configuration of the integration, because that's an important one. The base URL has to point to your own Citrix Cloud subscription URL, as you can see above. Secondly, we have to configure the service action authentication using API keys, and at the prefix we make sure there is our token key, and at the value we have to put in our token, which is configured at the webhook listener. So the service action is configured to post directly through the webhook back into Citrix and fill the tables. So we've created a service action with the correct parameters which are required, and we do a post command to the API URL with a body made in JSON so it can be saved to the table directly. So then we've created two microapps. A notification overview microapp is the first one we're going to look at. We've created a notification page, and this is our detailed notification page. As you can see, you see the title, the type, timestamp, start time, end time, message. The start time and end time are hidden if empty and in a date time format. So let's look at the second page, the notification overview page. The notification overview page is a table, and at the table we've created an action. So if you click on one of the incidents of the notifications, you go directly to the notifications. We created through 3 columns, so it gives us some information. After that, we've created a notification, and the notification will give us the notification to the user. You'll see here that I've used the title parameter and the message parameter to fill in the title and the body. And we've targeted the page at notifications, so when you click it, it will go directly to the detailed page of the notifications. So then, after this, we have to create a second microapp, and the second microapp is the new notifications microapp. There we've created one page, and that page that is the page where we can give up the title, the type of notification, the start time, the end time, the message, and at the bottom you'll see the notification button and a hidden date and time field. The hidden date and time field we use for the ID of the database, and we use it for the start time, to use the input validator to set it on the date time field, so it will never be able to fill in before the current date and time. And at the end time we did the same, but then we connected it to the start date and time. Besides that, we created some logic, and the logic will make sure that when you choose maintenance, start time, end time will be available and required, else it will not be available and not required. So if you choose for incident or information, you don't have to fill that in. Last thing is you create a send notification button with two actions. The first action is a service action where it will run the post request, and the second action is the run notification trigger, so the notification is triggered and sent to the user.
So Jeroen, that's cool.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay. Yes, and then the next one, that's going to be for me. So we're going to show you how to use Azure Logical Apps to connect your application that doesn't have a native API to Microapps, Citrix Microapps. So first we're going to show you the user point of view of running the Microapp, then we're going to show what's happening in the background in Azure. So explain how the input gets processed and show the result. So this is something that we run in a customer environment, and the customer has a hybrid Azure AD. So there's a local Active Directory where the users are created and then they're synced up to Azure. So that gives us the problem that when you create a new user, it has to be created in the local AD, and the Microapp cannot connect directly to the local Active Directory of the customer. So to fix that, we created a Microapp. So what a Microapp does is it creates a new user. You can click on it. Again, it's in Dutch, but you can see. Well, I can create myself. So I can create my first name, last name. You can see the bottom two are the question: who's going to manage it, and which department is the user going to work. And what you can see there is there are some pre-populated choices, and those choices we use another Microapp to fill in a table in the Citrix environment where they can fill in that kind of information. So what it does is it creates a predefined user with a common set of applications, and we have other apps. For example, on the bottom left you can see application access, requesting application access, so the user can create a request to access applications that are not in his default set. So just to create a workflow, that's over there on the left. So on this way we can create a user with a set base. So a set base of tools. So another thing is the date on which the account should be disabled, if it needed. So I disabled myself the same day just to be sure that I'm not an active user. So this is all that the admin has to do, and then we go to the magic on the back end. So if you look at the Azure Logical App that we have for them, you can see that the application has already run. So you can see it took us over a second to run the application on the customer side. So what it did is the fields that we filled in sent an HTTP request to a Logical App with all the necessary information in the body that eventually parsed it into a JSON. And then we created an application, or we created an Azure automation job that uses the information that is parsed into JSON into PowerShell. And then that PowerShell is being sent to the hybrid worker, the Azure hybrid worker that's set in the customer domain to run the PowerShell against the local Active Directory. And then there's a response, and the response always needs to be something, because otherwise the Microapp does not know if the HTTP request was successful. So if the API request was successful, so you always have to send something back. So a little bit more detail. What happens once we post a URL? You can we get all this information. We parse that information into a JSON, and then you can create an automation job where we set the runbook parameters based on the information we get from the body. So we run that as a post new we create a new AD user, and then we give a response saying, okay, if the status code is 200, this is the information you inputted, and this is the information you get back. Another thing you need to watch out is when a user, someone who doesn't work in your organization knows the HTTP request, you can send the information to it. And there are ways in Azure Logical Apps to prevent unauthorized users from sending information, for example, IP address blocking or something. So you know that the only one that can send a request to the environment is the API manager. So then you don't have any issues with getting all these users in the Active Directory that are not working for you. So that would give a problem. So we're going to look at the Azure automation account to see what happens. So these are some of the things we do. This is the GET request that I clicked on by mistake, but you can see that also runs, and we can get the AD users here. And this is for another example, but we're going to go now to the correct one because I clicked the wrong one. It's going to be a little bit above this one, or the bottom one. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so you can see here it ran and it completed successfully. So if we click on it, you can see what happens. So the input was my user created in the correct OU with the correct manager and the one who did it and the OU in which it should reside. So all the information that we put in through the Microapp is being displayed here. And you can look at the output to see what happened when we run that PowerShell on the hybrid worker. And you can see there's an error. So it seems to be that something was not working with the identity ICT. Okay, we have to look into that. But that's something we need to know. There are also some warnings, but in the end, let's see if the user has been created. So if we go now to the tab ICT, there I am. All right, so I am now officially working at the customer. So I have an email address, and because we run PowerShell, we can also add extra things to it. So we can create a home directory with the correct user attributes and correct security settings, and all the other things you need from a default user. You can add it to groups. These are all things you can run because you're running PowerShell against the local Active Directory, as we all know and have done. And as you can see, I always the end date is set as we configured. So what does that show to the user? So once the user, the admin has done that, there's a notification saying, hey, the user has been created, and watch out, these are the settings you configured it to have, and these are the settings they have. So in the end, this would be a working solution for adding a user to a local Active Directory through Azure AD, through a logical app and Azure Automation. So that's a real cool way of connecting things that aren't natively having an API that Citrix Microapps and Citrix Microapps can connect to still be configured and maintained through Microapps. So that's really cool information and really cool way to use Azure Logical Apps to configure this. So of course there are some pitfalls when you're creating the ultimate Citrix Workspace. Yep. So one of the things that I found out is, because I'm a mouse clicking professional, is that Citrix Microapps is not all for the mouse clicking professional, because there's a lot of scripting involved. As for example, Jeroen showed, getting the API calls, this information, that information. There's a lot of things you need to know that are not mouse clicking driven, for example. And that was something I had to get used to, because I'm an IT professional from the old school and I'm a Microsoft buff. So if it has a mouse, then I can work with it. But Citrix Microapps adds another layer of complexity for your work. So be aware of that.
So the other thing we also encountered is that it's better to start small. For example, we've created a Microapp to integrate with Topdesk. And Topdesk has, of course, a lot of functions and a lot of opportunities which you can build into the Microapp using the API. But if you are going to start really big, it's not going to work as you planned. So the best thing to do is to start small, let's say by creating a simple incident, and then build on the platform and make it bigger and bigger and add more functions along the way.
Of course. So the other thing is that implemented settings, once you change a micro app, are not always instantaneously live. So this is something that when we worked on with the portal in the start of this year, was more of an issue than it is now, because most changes are instantaneously live-ish. But we found out that once you fill in something, once you change a micro app and click save, check if it's not just a timing issue and you need to refresh another time for the setting to become active. So please check.
So another thing with the cloud is that it changes constantly. So what we've seen is that buttons inside the admin console of Microapps can change to other positions, or they can come and they can go. Functions are added along the way. So make sure you always check if everything you created is still working, and also constantly check if there are some new cool features that are added to the cloud. They are constantly adding new things, so there are constantly new possibilities to make new cool things inside the microapps.
Amen to that. So there's another thing that you need to watch out, because you're syncing data to the Citrix environment, so it can be shown to the users, because once you click something that has an API and that has to talk to another application and needs to fetch data, it can take up to 30-40 seconds for the data to appear. That's not a customer or a user-friendly experience. So Citrix caches a lot of the data that you have from the last sync in their own data center or in the Azure data centers where they reside their workspace portal. So that's something you need to be aware of, and you need to clarify with your security guys that Citrix has a copy of the data, and Citrix has that inside Azure, and that's all very secure and very okay. But it's good to know and to tell before you start the project, watch out. The data is not only in the database, but there's a secured cached copy of the last sync in the Citrix environment. So watch out for that.
So another thing with the sync is that the data shown to the user is not real time, because of your data endpoints, which you synchronize in intervals. It will not always show you the latest data, except when you're using webhooks, because a webhook, you can post data to the webhook, and that will be instantly available inside the database, and also will be instantly available to the users. So that's something to keep in mind, that not all data is real-time available except using the webhooks.
Yes, yeah, that's a good one. So one of the other things is watch out for API changes. What we found out is that application suppliers sometimes change their APIs or part of the APIs without telling us. So then something would break in a microapp and you have no idea what went wrong. And then you contact the supplier and they say, oh yeah, well, the API has changed. Or you have to get to the programs to know that the API has changed, and that's why your microapp is not functioning. So you need to talk to your suppliers that give you the applications about if they have a release schedule on API changes and release notes on those, because it can cause unexpected surprises.
And the last one is that you have to watch out for expiring authentication tokens. When you configure the microapps, in some cases you use authentication tokens that will expire within an amount of time. So make sure you always know when the authentication tokens will expire, so you can refresh them in time. Otherwise your microapp and your synchronization will stop working.
Yeah, that's something that we want, right?
Yeah, we don't.
No. Okay, so another thing is I accidentally broke the Citrix backend, and that's because we did a big query to a third-party application, and the data needs to be parsed into the Citrix environment. So what we did is we did for an application, we downloaded all the data from the application from some tables into the Citrix backend, and it caused memory hogging. So it broke some of the parts that Citrix used for Citrix Workspace for the running the microapps. So there's a solution for that, Jeroen. That's called pagination.
Yeah, that's pagination. That's correct. The thing that's happening if you do a really big query, it's going to create a really big JSON file, and that's going to be really hard for the Citrix backend to publish it. And if they are really too big, you can break down the Citrix backend. So the solution is to use pagination and break it up in small JSON files. So when you use pagination on the API, and there are, for example, 10,000 records, you can split it up in 100 or 200 pages of, for example, 100 pieces at a time. And so the JSON files will be smaller, they will be easier to process, and the Citrix backend will not break.
And that's better.
Yeah, and that's better.
Yeah. So, okay, so those are some of the common pitfalls, and you're free to contact us if you have any other things you want to know about this environment, of course, and about how we did stuff. But just to recap, because we're coming to the end of our session. So the session goals was, okay, we're going to tell you a little bit how we're building a Citrix Workspace environment. We showed you how you could be using built-in integration from Microapps. We showed you how you can retrieve data from third-party applications through an API. We showed you how you could use webhooks. We showed you how you could use Azure Logic Labs to get and post data into systems that don't have a native API you can talk to. And we shared some of our pitfalls. So those are not all the pitfalls, and all these different microapps you can have a session about for 4 hours if you really want to dig really deep into them. But we hope we gave you an overview of the possibilities of the Citrix Microapps, and how it has helped us with, in this case, our customer, and it will help you perhaps with your customer to show the different ways of getting the microapps to get and post data from all these third-party applications. So with that, thank you for your time, and we hope to speak to you soon.
Yes, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.